again, folks. This is Janaki, and this is Bathsheba, and together we are Catomancy Tarot. Welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would do another VR, and this one seems like a recent classic and a lot of fun. This is Sylvain's 7 decks for 7 deadly sins. This is a really fun one, so I'm gonna do the thing where I flip my camera around and I'll walk you through what I've chosen for each of these deadly sins. Oh no, it's my ceiling! Okay, I figured it out. I feel like a very important part of tarot YouTube is your tablecloth. Am I right? So I guess this feels like another part of the YouTube introduction is having the cloth, and then you've got to have your little companions here. So this is a camel. I got it in Jordan when I was doing archaeology in undergrad. And then this is a little frog, which I got when I was in Jaipur doing a Hindi language program. So they're gonna be our little companions today. I gotta set the mood, light some incense, of course, with a little lucky cat lighter there. Alrighty, so funny story. I was trying to change a light bulb in order to have better lighting, but I dropped and broke a light bulb right on this cloth earlier, and I just had to vacuum glass out of it. So if it's not bright enough, it's my fault. Anyways, so 7 deadly sins. So the first one is pride, a deck you purchased or used for flexing. And so this is a super special deck that I just found recently. It's a deck that I've had on my wish list for a long time, but it's also a deck that I haven't shared on social media yet. But this is a deck that's, it's rare and it's out of print, and I found a copy on Facebook Marketplace and I went for it. So this is the Golden Rider, which is my favorite version of the Rider-Waite-Smith. It was very hard to find, but I finally found a copy that was, it wasn't reasonably priced, but it wasn't unreasonably priced either. I'm not sure, but oh, the art is, the faces are so bad in this deck, and that's kind of why I love it. For me, I don't like art that's too, I don't know, like if it's too pretty or too, I don't know, nicey, I don't know what the words are, but in order for a tarot art to be good, it has to be kind of bad for me. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I love how I think this is Francois Taperneau is did these oil paintings in the 90s, and he's just kind of made the faces worse, but the colors are better. Like, I love all of the pink gradations in the sky. Yeah, I've seen this deck around for years, and I've always been extremely envious. And this is one of my, I guess, unicorn decks, white whale decks, if you will. I like the black background that gets added to some of them. Yeah, so this is definitely a pride deck for me. I've also, since I'm someone who does research on tarot, hold that thought. I love this card because it with the opacity, it makes it look like this person is a ghost, which I love. Like, and I think it works for the card as well. But as I was saying, as someone who does research on tarot, the Rider-Waite-Smith images are just everywhere, and that was the first deck I ever got. But I'm seeing them so often and just all the time that they've kind of worn out their magic, which kind of sucks because it's a very special, very important deck. And so since getting this deck, it's been like a way for me to kind of re-enchant the Rider-Waite-Smith images to feel like they're magical again. And I love the gold and copper borders. Yeah, so I think it's important for you for to have a Rider-Waite-Smith deck that that works for you and that feels magical. And this is the one for me. So good. So that's my Pride deck. Next on the list is Greed, a deck you don't share with anybody or you only use for yourself. So I feel like I don't think of greed when I think of this deck, but I'm going with Sylvain's definition of a deck you don't share with anybody or you only use for yourself. So this is the Abyssal Tarot. This is a underwater photography deck. So I'm, full disclosure, I'm a very Cancer. I have a stellium in Cancer. My Sun, Mercury, Venus, and my South Node are all in Cancer. So I'm a very emotional person. Also, nudity warning coming up. Lots of nudity. And so I found that this is the deck that I use when I'm really, really, really up in my feels. Something about the underwater photography element of it just makes it feel kind of ethereal and emotional and really vulnerable with all of the nudity in this deck. So it feels like I'm kind of, this is my it's a deck that's sort of all about vulnerability for me. And because of that, and because these images sort of feel so personal, I feel like I'm showing you guys my naked emotional body by showing you these images. But it's a deck that I wouldn't, use in a reading for someone, or I haven't really. And I think part of that is one of the things that, I don't love about this deck is that it's just filled with white, able-bodied humans. There is a little bit of, queer stuff going on with this deck, but it's still kind of, it's not a deck for everyone. And it's also got some quite challenging images in it. And it's also, it's on the expensive end of indie decks, and the cardstock is also very, very flimsy. It's the flimsiest of cardstock of decks that I have, and that just makes it feel more, more fragile, more, tremulous, if I can say that. But because of that, it feels like, it also qualifies for greed because it's beautiful and I wanted it and I bought it, and it has these lovely gold borders. The backs are kind of funky because none of them are the same. And I read somewhere, someone worked this out. I wouldn't have figured it out by myself, but whichever suit on the back is dominant, that's the element of the card, which is kind of fun. So let's see here. We just got a bunch of majors. So with the 9 of Cups, water is the biggest. So I think that's fun. So this is my greed deck. All right. I'll put that aside. So next up is Wrath, a deck you're angry at. And so this is a deck that's been around since the 80s. This is the Medieval Scapini Tarot. I bought this tarot recently because I wanted just like a silly medieval deck, and I think that's exactly what this deck is. I'm a big fan of you know, sci-fi and fantasy and like really tropey long fantasy books, and so I wanted a like a playful little medieval deck, and that's what I was looking for. But on my very first walkthrough, I've got the cards in question up front here, I think. Let's see here. We might have to, yeah, I left it in here. So on my very first walkthrough of this deck, I noticed some things, and I'm wondering if any of you guys out there have noticed this and what you make of it. So in the Queen of Wands, if you look at her feet, there's the Ku Klux Klan. They weren't around in medieval times. What are they doing there? And then you've also got witches and like ghosts, and like I just don't know what's going on. Like, did she sanction the witches to like go after the Ku Klux Klan? Like that's the only acceptable storyline I can imagine. And I think I looked at the guidebook to see what it said, and it was talking about different, you know, irrationalities. But to me, you know, witches and ghosts aren't on the same level of irrationality as the KKK, and it just, yeah. So this is an image that was really jarring. Like, I was upset about it, and I was like, well, if it's only one card, you know, maybe I can get over it. But it just felt really out of place. But then there was a few other cards that I was like, huh, what's going on here? So in the Queen of Wands, you can see down at her feet, she has a white baby and a black baby. And the black baby has the like characteristic like minstrel style red lips. And I was like, hold up, like, I don't know how I feel about that. And, you know, in tarot, there's a lot of like black and white polarity going on with like the pillars of the High Priestess, or like the sphinxes in front of the chariot. But like, do we have to do that also with human babies? That just felt a little gross to me. And then I went through the deck, and the other depictions of black people in this deck were like similarly like, I don't know how I feel about this. Like the only other ones are, this is the Page of Wands, and you can see like a manacle there. So this is an enslaved person who was newly freed. And the other ones you see here are this woman who's clearly in some sort of like, she's got a broom there, some kind of like servant position, and then this person who also had, both these have the sort of like red lip style, which I don't, you know, it's coming out of a specific like minstrel tradition, and I know a lot of the like this guy is, you know, it's also consistent with the artist's style, but just a few of those things like jumped out at me, and I'm like, now kind of uncomfortable with this deck, especially because I just wanted like a fun, silly medieval thing, but then it has some like, and you know, of course, this is a deck, that was filmed, or sorry, this was a deck that was created in the 1980s, and by an Italian, and you know, there's a very different history of, you know, race and racial depictions in Europe, but I was still, I'm mad at this deck because I just wanted it to be a fun deck, and then my like sort of academic critic brain got triggered by some of those images, and now I'm just kind of like uncomfortable. I'm not at all trying to get a deck canceled. Like, I know this is a very beloved deck, and I'd be interested to hear if you guys have noticed that, or what you guys sort of make of it. But I was just, I was just trying to have a fun, silly medieval time. And now I haven't really worked with this deck because I noticed some of those things on my very first flip through, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. But like I love the pips in this deck. I love the majors. Like I love so many other things. So I think this is one that I'm just gonna have to sit with. But so yeah, Wrath. Next up after Wrath is we have Envy, a deck you wanted because other people have it. And this is, I feel like I have most of my decks because I saw other people have them. But there's 2 decks I want to feature here. And I want to show 2 sides of this coin. What happened when I got a deck that other people had that I wanted that it turns out I really don't like, and then also a deck that I got because other people have it that I really, really love. So we'll start with the one that I got this deck, Visions in the Liminal Space. It's an oracle. It came out last year. It's by the same folks who did Postcards in the Liminal Space, and that's a deck that's been sort of out of print and like hard to get a hold of, and then you see it going for like exorbitant prices. And so and I've seen that deck featured in like all over Instagram, and I felt left out. But then I got this deck, and it's just like it feels too trendy for me. I think there's a few cards in it that I do like. But for me, it just feels like this deck is trying to be like so trendy and so kind of on point, that I haven't really used it. I think this is one that I'm going to declutter or move on. But I feel like, and I know there's also both of these decks are kind of based on the Morgan's Tarot, and maybe I should just get that. But even with that, there's some like cards that kind of just come out of left field, and I think that's the point with these. But I kind of wish I could just pick and choose my favorites out of all 3. But yeah, I'm not sure. This is one that I got like very quickly before like having seen all of the cards, and there's something about it that like this card I like. Like this is funny to me, but then there's, I don't know, there's some of the like I don't know. I love all the ghosts. I want more ghost cards. Like I like this one a lot. Like I like a lot. I also love this one with this sort of like DNA raft. But then there's some of them that I just are upsettingly contemporary. And I think that's something that I've noticed about myself, is that if a deck is like too contemporary, if there's like cell phones in it, or I don't know. I don't have a lot of like very, very modern decks, and I think this one is just is too much for me. But I think I also like the idea of having a black and white oracle deck. But yeah, so this is a case where my deck envy didn't work out. A case where it did work out is, I feel like there's a weird cult around Crow's Magic Tarot that's been happening on YouTube, and I want it in. So I think this deck the first person to like bring light to this deck on TarotTube was Anna from Astro Lady Tarot. And then I've since seen it on like Sylvain's channel, as well as like a few other people have it too. I think Mistress Ray and Meg from Rose Honey Ritual, and like all of these really cool YouTube people. And I wanted to be I wanted to be part of the cool in crowd. And I found a copy of this deck. You know how people tell you that, you know, if you know you're meant to have a deck, it'll just come to you. Well, that's not what happened with this deck. I got impatient and I bought it on eBay. I think it was like $50, which isn't the worst for an out of print deck. But then like a few days later, I found it for like $30 on Facebook Marketplace, and I was like, dang, I should have just waited. But I didn't wait. I was impatient. But I love this deck. I have lots of thoughts that I might make a video just about this one. But I feel like it hits my like goth girl deck desires. It was made by Londa Marks, who was someone who did like costumes for rock bands in the 80s, as I understand it, and that really comes through. That kind of energy comes through, and it's also kind of like a cyber goth, like techno pagan vibes, which I also really dig, and I've really enjoyed working with this deck. So this is definitely a big envy deck that I had for a while, and then I impulsively got on the train, and I'm so glad I'm on this ride. It's a really weird ride, but I'm having a good time with all these critters. Yeah, definitely. So that is my other envy deck. The next is Lust. And I showed this deck in my last video. This deck is the Ritual Tarot by Tira May. And these are the backs. I got one of the sort of like matte gilded copies. I think it looks really pretty. But this is definitely a Lust deck for me. I love collage decks, and the art, like the images she's chosen to work with are just kind of like very, very sumptuous. She also posted, and I'll see if I can put a link to the video below. She's also a musician, which is incredible, and she posted like a music video of her just doing some of these analog collages to one of her songs, and I was so seduced, you guys. I'm really into the sort of the like you know, the sort of dark witchy you know, Chelsea Wolfe, Emma Ruth Rundle kind of sad girl music. And that's not quite Tira May's style, but it was like equally as enchanting. And I had to get this deck. I was very quickly seduced by this deck. And I've only had it for a couple of weeks, so I'm excited to work with it a little bit more. But the imagery is just, it's really beautiful. Yeah, so I might, as I work with it a little bit more, if you guys are interested, I might do a little, like, I know some people do like tarot in practice or walkthroughs where they go through their, you know, thoughts on working with a deck, and this is definitely one I'd want to do a deep dive on. This death card is scary to me, though. It's a very scary death card. Like most, with most death cards, I feel like it's easy to get, you know, butterflies and transformation and all of these ways we try and like new age death up. and this feels like an experience of like the soul leaving a body. Like it's kind of psychedelic, in a really sort of, yeah, there's elements of this deck where I'm kind of like, ooh, that feels a little scary. But I'm really enjoying working with this deck. And so this is also look at this Justice, little Holophonies moment here with the severed head. We've got our Judge Judith here. I love this card. It's so pretty. And again, I love a good poppy in a deck. All right, so that was Lust. Okay, only two more. So we've got Gluttony, a deck you really didn't need, but purchased anyways. So this is a deck that is having a moment right now. A lot of people love this deck. It was picked up mass market. And I got this deck, I found out about it on Instagram before it went mass market. So this copy is the indie edition, and the indie edition comes with gilding, which, you know, I can kind of take. I don't like the really shiny kind. I like matte edges. It doesn't always need to be shiny gold. There's a lot of shiny gold going around, but the reason this is a Gluttony deck for me is that as soon as I got it for the indie price, and I'm kind of like, I should have just waited and then paid less for it, and I would have felt better about that. But for some reason, this is a deck that I just feel really bad about owning. So this is a deck that it's a collage deck. It's really pretty. It's very multicultural. It should be right up my alley, but there's something about it where like it's close to some of the other deck styles I have, and so this deck just felt excessive. Like I really didn't need it, and because of that feeling, I haven't really worked with this deck too much. This is a deck that I don't know if I'll keep forever, but like I know it's having a moment, and I know it's really pretty, and I want to like it, but I don't know. It felt like an excessive purchase to me. The other thing that I'm kind of unsure about this deck with is like I don't quite understand the intuitive night world all of these goddesses are living in. Like it feels very decontextualized, so you don't get any information about like specific goddesses, even though, let's see, I think the deck is in order. If we look here with the Four of Pentacles, this is like clearly a depiction of Lakshmi, but there's sort of no discussion of her. So it's this world in which all of these goddesses are living in is just this like decontextualized fantasy world. Which is great, but like I want context. So like if I want a really pretty collage deck, I have the Spolia, and if I want like a dark goddess deck, I have the Dark Goddess Tarot. So for me, that's why this is a Gluttony deck, is because like I have decks that do the same thing, and then I bought a fancy edition that I don't really need, and yeah, but I know a lot of people love this deck, and it is a beautiful deck, but it just hasn't been doing it for me for some reason. So that's Gluttony. And last one, so the last deck I'm going to show you guys today is my Sloth deck. So this is an oracle deck. This is the Sacred Symbols Oracle, and I love this deck. And I feel like by calling it Sloth, I'm like doing it an injustice. This is a deck by Marcella Kroll in Los Angeles, who is amazing. I edged it in red, but I regret it because it bleeds on the fronts. And this is a very well-worn copy, but it looks good from the side, just not from the fronts. Do you ever do that? Sometimes I feel like if I'm bored, like I just want a really repetitive craft project, like etching a deck. I just find it really satisfying. And sometimes I'll do deck mods that I instantly regret. It's not too bad. Anyways, the reason I picked this for Sloth is because the images are so simple, the messages are very clear, like it's just kind of iconic. And so whenever I just want like a very straightforward, you know, pull no punches, like directly, this is what this means. This is a deck I'll use, so in that way, like I don't have to do a lot of work to like understand what all of the symbols mean. But I don't like, that's not to say that this deck doesn't have depth. It's just to say that, you know, I think it's very, very well designed in that sense. And her guidebook is also very well written. This is also, I think this is the first Oracle deck I ever got. So I've had it probably since 2018. I think she's about to release a new edition of it. So I think if you're into this deck, I think she's only got a few of this edition left. But the other way it might tie into Sloth is that because it's just like so bright and so simple, it goes really well with a lot of other decks. And so like I can pair it with anything. I don't really have to think about like, you know, getting really involved and like, ooh, can I use this deck? Will it match? And the answer is like, yes, this deck will go with anything. All right, so that was my last prompt. So we've wrapped up here. We've gone through this journey of all of the sins. Thank you for joining me. Before you go, I just want to show you, in my first video, I showed you the plate that I carved for my Oracle deck, and I printed it last night, and this is how the print came out. This is Hair in the Drain. So I'm still waiting. I use like an oil-based ink, and I'm waiting for it to dry fully so I can do some watercolor on top. But yeah, so that's how that's going. Thanks for joining me, guys. I will see you next